Hello, this is Angelia with today's wisdom. Today's wisdom comes from Daily Ohm. Accepting loss, the cycle of grief. And we all know grief is one of the hardest things that we face in life because it, just hits you so hard that, only time is going to fix it for you. When we experience any kind of devastating loss, whether it is the loss of a loved one, a dream, or a relationship, feelings may arise within us that are overwhelming or difficult to cope with. And I think we all know that is true. We've all probably lost a loved one. If you haven't yet, then, be prepared. That's going to be a hard one. A dream, we've all had dreams we'd like to achieve, and then you go for it and it doesn't work out, or you find out you can't do it based on, whatever the problem is that's stopping you, and that you can't overcome, and that's, just going to make you sad. Relationships, we've all had crushes or loves for other folks that they just did not return or did not return in the same way, and we realized that and had to walk away, and we're all going to be overwhelmed at such, losses, and it is a hard thing to cope with, but the important thing is that you do cope with it, because pretending it's not happening is only going to delay, your problems. This sense of grief can also come up when we are separated from anyone or anything we have welcomed into our lives. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes we have people that come into our lives and they're great, and then they just kind of move on. And we have that, hole there where we used to have a friend or, close person that, maybe we thought we were going to go somewhere else with that relationship, but it didn't. These things can kind of knock us off balance when they happen. And while it may feel like we are caught up in a never-ending spiral of sadness and emptiness, it is important to remember that the grief we are feeling is not a permanent state of being. And when you're in it, that's how it can feel. It's like what's happening now. I remember, like I said, when my mom passed away, I would wake up and I'd be like, what is going to happen now? We had plans. The rest of my life was going to be based on this. I know she can't help it. I had enough presence of mind, thankfully, to know she couldn't help it if she passed away. There are people who get mad at people, because they passed away. I know a woman who is still mad at her husband. He's been dead for, 15 years, and she's still mad at him for leaving her alone when, they had stuff to do. And that's ridiculous in my opinion, because, people can't help it when they die. But it can knock you off balance and make you feel like, all your plans, just the bottom dropped out and you don't know what you're going to do with the rest of your life. But the important thing is, if that happens, you dust yourself off, get back up, and go on with your life. Rather, grief is a part of the process of letting go that in many ways can be a gift, allowing us to go deeper within ourselves to rediscover the light amidst the seeming darkness. Because we can be our own light. Sometimes we allow other people to do that for us, but it's best if you do that for you, and if your higher power is the source of this light. The emotions that accompany any kind of loss can be intense and varied, and of course they are. That's just common sense. A sense of shock or denial is often the first reaction, to be replaced by anger. And I remember when my dad called me, and at first I was like, for real? Because sometimes there are people who play jokes. He's not necessarily one of them, and I'm not supposed to talk about him anyway. But that's the person who called me when Mom passed away. And I just was kind of in disbelief because she had been doing so much better. I just found it hard to believe that she just dropped dead. A sense of shock or denial is often the first reaction to be replaced by anger. Sometimes this anger can be directed at your loved one for abandoning you, as the woman I was talking about earlier. At other times, you may feel outraged toward the universe for what you are enduring. And there are a lot of people, I hear people every now and then talk about how, it's unfair. That what's happening to them is unfair. And Jesus said that, nothing that's happening to you is not anything that's uncommon to man. So all of us go through stuff. Some worse than others. Some get it easier than others. But you're not going to have anything happen to you that's never happened under the sun. And, life isn't fair. Jesus told us that. It's not going to be fair. You just have to suck it up and move on. And while there are stages of grief that people go through, moving from denial to anger to bargaining to depression to acceptance, the cycles of grief often move in spirals, sometimes circling forward and then back again. Because some days you're better, some days you're in a good mood and it's not so bad, some days you're already getting up in a depressed or anxious mood, and then it's going to hit you. You may even experience moments of strength, faith, and laughter in between. And you might, that's the whole point of, having a funeral and the get-together afterwards, wake, whatever you want to call it, is to commiserate, to, make a positive sort of experience out of this negative experience. You all got together as a family or in friends and talked and, probably had a meal together. And, there's something to be said for that process. While these emotions seem to come and go sporadically, it is important to feel them, accept them, and allow them to flow. Because anytime you repress emotions, they're just sitting in there festering, waiting to come out later when they come to a head. You need to express them while the event is happening and get them over with, then repress them, and like I said, it's going to sit in there as garbage that's going to come to a head and come out later. So, you need to feel your emotions when you need to feel your emotions. Women are better about that than most men. With time, patience, and compassion, you will eventually find your center again, and you will. I can tell you from experience, you will. As we move through our grief, we may find ourselves reluctant to release our pain, fearing we are letting go of who or what we have lost. And I've known people like that. They just dwell on it constantly. And that's not healthy either, because, you're allowed to let go. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to move on with your life. And if you stay in that and become still obsessed, is a word that in some cases I think is good. The rest of your life's not going to be as it could be, as if you're devoting everything to this person, place, or thing that you lost. We may even regard our movement toward healing as an act of disloyalty or giving up. And it's neither one of those. If your loved one, excuse me, had an allergy weekend. If your loved one could talk to you, they would probably say, hey, I don't want you to be obsessing over me, dwelling on me. I want you to move on. I want you to have, a life. I'm in heaven or the other world or what do you want to call it, having a good life. So I want you to do the same. You're not disloyal by moving on. Knowing that while the hurt may fade, the essence of what you had and who you loved will have already transformed you and forever stay with you. Because, we all remember our first love, our second. We all remember anyone that we ever loved, that was in our heart. And that person's always going to be with us, even when they're not with us. We're always going to remember them. Sometimes it's good that people don't stay in your life. I found that to be true. There were folks that I just was sure I loved, head over heels. And then, for one reason or another, they left my life. And then, as they say, hindsight's 2020. You can look back and say, wow, God, you really did let me dodge a bullet, because here's how this person turned out, or here's what this person did, or, you realize that person had no, real feelings for you, because if they did, they wouldn't have treated you the way they treated you. I mean, you can't love someone and do something hateful to them in the same stroke. It doesn't work that way. So, if anything, once you are ready for the pain of your loss to subside, the memories can then live more fully within you. And they do. Like I said, my mom was my best friend for the last 5 years of her life. So I hadn't thought about, the other stuff. But then after she passed, I could think about the other stuff, and I could look at her as a whole person. It's like she lived through some stuff. And so she found herself in a situation. She was trying to deal the best she could. She wasn't, ready, honestly. And then, she had some maladaptive ways of dealing things like we all do. And then eventually she kind of brought that all together and tied it up and moved on. And so I respect people who do that, because there's so many people who just stay stuck in their pain and never move forward, never take out their mental and emotional garbage. And then they just spill that all over everybody else around them all the time. So remember that healing is a part of the spiraling cycles of grief, and that in letting yourself feel restored again, you are surrendering to a natural process in the natural process in the dance of life. Kind of an odd thing they put on the end of that. So remember, accepting the loss is a part of the cycle of grief, and you need to allow yourself to feel that. So, when you're faced with grief, allow yourself to have those feelings then, process those feelings then, or it's going to, like I said, turn into garbage. It's going to fester and pop out on you later on. Think about it. Please like and share this wisdom so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.